Okay, we have very special guest on our set of interviews, Ask an Archer. This week has been somewhat of a week of meeting living legends. I had the pleasure of speaking to Bede Dwyer earlier this week from Australia, who's certainly one of the, I guess, you know, elder statesmen, maybe people who's from the old school of traditional archery. And certainly one of his peers, his respected peers and teachers that, that he even mentioned himself was Jaap Koppedrayer. So Jaap and Kay, thank you very much for giving us your time and speaking with us. How are you?
You're welcome. Thank you.
Hi. Kay is just off camera, but she is with us. Excellent. Okay, we have much to go through. People that know about you already, Jaap, they will know, the long, extensive experience and time that you have been involved in traditional archery. But if you would kindly give us maybe a kind of summarized background as to your journey beginning in archery and where you're at today, if possible.
Well, my journey started as a little kid, making bows because, being a generation after the war, we were not allowed to have any, guns or anything that looked like guns.
And this is in the Netherlands, right?
This is in the Netherlands, yes. I was just, about 6, 7 years old around that time. Sure. But anyway, boys need to be boys, and so we found other ways, slingshot and bows and arrows, and I started making bows and arrows. Yeah. And I guess I developed a love for archery. However, then, you got to go to school, you do your things, and I guess in 1980s, I don't know when we were in Hansa somewhere. And
70. It was 74.
Oh, 74. Mm-hmm. 1974, we were in Hansa. And this the mirror of Hansa, came running up with a beautiful Hansa bow.
Sorry, Hansa is where exactly?
Hansa is north of Pakistan. Between, between India, northern India, part of that's Central India, China, Russia. It's a valley. It's a narrow valley in between.
Right.
And those days. Quite an adventure to get to.
I can imagine. But by this time, you and Kay were already together. You were traveling, presumably, yes. Or you're working up there, or?
No, we were traveling. We're for about a year on the road.
Oh, amazing.
We were young. And,
I'm sure that's a whole story for another day.
Oh, that's a whole other story. But anyhow, I got this.
Sure, I'll come in. So here's the bow.
Wow, that's the actual bow.
That's the actual bow.
Oh, amazing.
And the unique thing about this bow is, these days I see a lot of talk about sinew,
yep.
Flattened sinew, blah, 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 blah. Well, this actually has flattened sinew.
Oh, amazing, amazing. So just hold it up slightly so we can get it in the camera. Yeah, okay.
It's also interesting because it's made with horn strips rather than a solid horn belly.
Interesting.
There's an article written around the 1920s by Balfour who describes the bow, and he says he's only seen Persian bows like this. Mm-hmm. And he describes it. It was back in the era of evolutionary anthropology. And he describes it as what a more primitive model or an earlier design of bow. I don't know if I'd agree with that. But that's how he describes it.
Yeah. But this shape is distinctive to that part of the world, right?
Or... Yes. Okay. I would say so. The shape, of course, is double curve. Double curve. I mean, it's close to the Hun style bow.
I was going to say it looks quite similar to that. Yeah.
And, it's not as small as the Turkic bows, but yeah. So that kind of kept.
That was the spark.
start the spark again. And then the real spark started in after 1983. 83, we spent a whole year. Kay was finishing her PhD, needed to be in India for a whole year.
Right.
And I tagged along. And on the way back, we stopped in Japan. And I say, there was a free stop. In those days, you would get free stops with certain airlines. So I want to stop in Japan and pick up a Japanese bow. And
why not?
so we did. We never knew where to go to. But anyway, we ended up in Kyoto by the bow maker Shibata family, Kyudo Shibata family bow makers.
Yeah.
And so we walked in the shop. This shop has been open for generations. And it's like a light bulb came on in my brain.
Amazing.
Wow, this is more in Japan and this can make a living. That's something I could do.
And when Jaap says generations, we're talking 21 generations.
Yeah, I read about this. This is amazing. I mean, to know that they have, this is one of the interesting things, especially about the Far Eastern traditions, that they have maintained this either family tradition or master to student tradition, which something I think in the West we've lost, or we haven't maintained that as well. But it's something from the Far East. It's really amazing that they've maintained that.
Yeah.
And fairly rigorous. We walked into a workshop that had been in operation for 21 generations. And now it's 22 generations.
Yeah,
the new generation is
excellent.
Yeah.
That's excellent.
Yeah. So then we got back home. In those days, we were living in Quebec. And darn it, I had only 2 arrows, you know. Of course, Japanese stuff, it's not cheap. So, and I knew nothing about Japanese archery in those days. But I picked up a beautiful bamboo Yumi. I still have it and still can be shot.
What was their reaction to you as a foreigner coming in and wanting, because, you know, for them, you know, archery is not just a sport type of thing. It's very much ingrained in their culture and religion, etc. So for them, it's quite a serious, thing, right?
Right.
What was their reaction to your interest as a foreigner and wanting to take the bow back?
I'd call it very receptive.
Yeah.
Extremely receptive. At that time, we call him Sensei. So Sensei's father, Sensei Shibata, had already been teaching in North America. And so we already had a fairly well-established group, not large, but significant group of people who were doing Kyudo.
Okay,
and so it wasn't something that one was imposing or entering into a tradition, but rather one was part of what's become global traditions. Archery is always shared back and forth, and there's been exchange, and there's been global practices.
Right.
And so it was stepping into that global practice. What was interesting is, obviously, we didn't know anything about Kyudo.
Right.
And it was fairly clear, but he was very kind, very generous of spirit.
And I had no qualms about, you know, I'd call it all myths, modern myths. You know, today there's groups of people say, oh, the bamboo Yumi, you know, they will never sell you one, or you shouldn't touch one. My sensei was never, ever like that, you know, and even, you know, now, you know, I've been practicing for decades, and our school, we always only bamboo Yumis, and whether you're a beginner, that's what you start with, not something, it's something so special, so sacred, you shouldn't touch it.
Right.
It's very down to earth in that way.
Right.
In effect, what Jaap's saying is, he bought the bow.
Right.
And then after you buy the bow, you have to learn how to shoot it.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
So and that rolls into how we met Matthew Chen in Quebec, a lacrosse stick maker from the Mohawk Nation.
Right.
A small reservation just below Montreal. Anyhow, I needed arrows, but you know, Japanese arrows are extra long. You can't buy long arrows, especially in those days. So where to get and say, well, maybe I'll go to the reservation maybe somebody there who can make it. And we ended up in one reservation on the other side of the river. Actually, there are two rivers there. One is the St. Lawrence River, and the other one is the Ottawa River.
When you say reservation, are you talking about like local native reservation?
Yes.
Yes, in Canada they're called reserves.
Right.
And both of the reserves are close to Montreal. There's several of them. And the two that we're talking about, the one is Kanawage, the other one is Kanasatake. Those were earlier mission settlements. So the Jesuits had actually settled Mohawks whose ancestral home was upstate New York, what is now upstate New York. But they were settled close to Montreal, but not in Montreal because of the decadence of the French community. They wanted to keep them apart. So these were lovely little enclaves where culture and tradition was preserved. I remember the first time we were with Matthew in Kanasatake, it's by Oka, Quebec, and somebody came to the door. They were speaking Mohawk. And these were the years of the language issues in Quebec, preservation of French, English versus French. And here I'm listening to a language that has been spoken for millennia in North America.
Amazing.
It was beautiful. Anyway, Matthew.
Yeah, so Matthew, he was just on bow fanatic as myself.
Oh, excellent. That helps.
Yeah.
Traditional. Lacrosse stick maker.
He's a traditional lacrosse stick maker.
Great. So he obviously had the know-how of working with wood and tools and things. Yeah.
Oh yeah, choosing wood. You would go in the forest with him to choose the trees for the hickory sticks.
Yeah.
So you know, for him, you walk with him in the forest, you look at this tree and makes a comment about this like it's common knowledge, but all of knowledge is just gone. Like he would talk about second growth, or he'd talk about the mother tree, or about this tree.
Right.
And you have to stop him and say, hey, translate this, because that's knowledge we don't have anymore.
Matthew had so much information, he never realized others didn't have that understanding.
Right.
And the way that we learned from Matthew was to be with him, watch what he was looking at, pay attention to what he was paying attention to. You don't want to interrupt somebody when they're working. And when you're out in the woods gathering trees or determining what to harvest, you don't want to be pestering by running a dialogue. So we had to learn from Matthew by watching
intuition,
where his eyes were going, watching what he was looking at, watching the way his hands moved across wood, what he was doing when he seen the wood, he bent it, what he was doing, because he assumed that knowledge was common, and for him it was commonplace. For us, absolutely not.
So that same technique I used when I went to Japan. I went many times to Japan, to the Kanjura household, and where I watched the procedures in making the yumis and gathering bamboo and things like that. And the key is with all traditional peoples, I would say, it seems to be a common theme among traditionals: no talking. If you talk, they quit what they're doing, and that's what they're going to be doing and talk.
Right.
So you just watch by observing.
So like a typical Westerner would go in there and say, look at this, and what are you doing now, and chit chat and everything. But traditionally you need to just keep it zipped.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so with Matthew, we say, well, let's start making some bows, and then we say, let's make some of the modern bows. We are using modern materials, fiberglass and glue like that, and we started making bow forms. This was 1983, so 84, 85, around that time. And anyhow, long story being short, but anyway, I was running a greenhouse company in those days. Greenhouses growing tropical plants or roses, and for the commercial trade. But then pretty soon, Kay got a phone call from the university in Ontario. It's a different province, and for a job, professor job.
Right.
As I take it, and I said I'm going to quit my greenhouse. It was not my company, but I was running a company with 22 people working for me, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Wow.
I said I got to do something totally different. I'm going to make bows and arrows, and I didn't even know you could sell one.
He sold his first bow before he made it.
Oh, really?
Man,
you're going to be Dutch, you know.
What type of bow was your first one? Do you remember?
Long. I start making a laminated American longbow.
Okay.
And I have a.
Yeah, he's got some copies.
Are they like flat bows?
Yeah, I'll show you in a second.
Aha, right.
There's only 2 left. Those I haven't made those bows for years.
Beautiful. Wow. Yeah.
So I started with the long bows, and I also made recurve. I started making recurve bows.
You mean like hunting bows, or?
Yes, because part of the market was hunting.
Those days.
Bear bows,
I mean, this is before people even know about Asian archery, so I don't think you see it.
Yeah.
This was short. I made 2 types. This type and a longer one. I don't have a longer one.
Right, but these are all one piece bows, right?
1-piece bows. I never believed in making 2-piece bows.
My
personal opinion is to take something away from the energy of the bow. So I never made those bows.
All right.
But anyway, then I started making I really like the Asiatic style bows. I knew about that, so I started making those. This would be 90s, the 1990s. That's before anybody knew about this stuff,
Wow, look at this. Wow.
So those are also laminated bows.
Yes.
Now they're called horse bows. I can't stand up to them.
And these are more kind of Korean style, or what type of style are these ones in?
To me, I just call them Asiatic style.
Right. Just short with the deflex in.
Yeah, this is 60 pounds, or maybe this one bends a little bit easier. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, you can see it.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah. So it has quite a curve around the handle, and it curves back on itself. Yeah.
And these bows were made not because Jaap was copying a design, but because he was learning designs.
Right. Right.
So he wasn't trying to create a Korean style bow or South Indian style bow or some sort of style bow, but it was because let's see what happens if we shorten the limb. Let's see what happens if we put more deflex in.
So they're like kind of more like experimental bows. They're showing the evolution of your knowledge and your bow making.
Yes.
Yeah, and also there was in those days there were a lot of hunters, but hunters who actually hunted instead of just sitting in a blind or they would go through the bush. It's hard to maneuver with a big longbow.
True.
Of course, the short bows even in a tree stand is very handy to have those.
Yeah.
And in those days, common poundage was anywhere from 55, 65, 95.
Wow.
Or 100-pound bows. That was just common. That was just common in those days.
65 was low.
Yeah, 65 was, that's nothing too
standard.
Nothing special.
Wow. Quite heavy. Yeah. Interesting.
And then this was early 90s. And then I really wanted to, I still twinkled from Japan, the bamboo. The bamboo was still calling. And of course, I bought laminate. In those days, I was buying laminations. I didn't make anything in that kind of thing. But then, yes, I really need bamboo.
Yeah.
And
I guess bamboo doesn't really grow in Quebec.
Not in Quebec.
We tried. It just didn't work.
That's the whole reason why we're in Georgia. We grow bamboo.
Right. Because obviously bamboo requires a certain temperature and environment to grow.
Yeah,
soil?
long season, long warm season, you know, a lot of rain. And
It also requires hard freeze for some period of time,
but no killer frost.
but not killer frost.
Right. So yeah. So
Well, you can have
killer frost, but not a winter like.
But we're not talking -40.
yeah, yeah. Okay, so you had to find somewhere that had that environment.
Yeah. Anyway, via a friend who no, I would buy bamboo from a Howard Hill company. Then my friend, I had a friend who cut bamboo. I would cut it, and pretty soon I said, well, I'm going to go to Georgia myself, you know, and find a place where bamboo grows, start cutting.
Right.
But the bamboo is considered just an obnoxious weed here in North America.
Right.
So one year you get a beautiful old 100-year-old growth, next year it's gone.
Oh, wow.
So
I guess is that because they didn't find any use in it? Obviously in the Far East they have many other uses for bamboo, but there was no practical or industrial use for bamboo, so they just see it as a weed.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
And anyhow, so we bought land and planted bamboo, you know, a couple of acres of bamboo and a couple of acres of Arab bamboo. And if it was really with it, when I was younger, maybe 20, 30 years ago, I should have bought land and planted trees. Trees for archery, like Osage orange, hickory, elm, and coppice-stem. You know the term coppice?
Coppice, yeah. Yeah, I've heard of it, yeah.
Yeah, that's where you get that second growth, and then you get third growth. How many times you coppice the tree, that new growth, that wood is that much better.
Really? Wow.
In springiness and in quality. And now I advise young people, buy land, plant trees. Yeah, you gotta wait 15 years before you can get your first cut, but then every so often, you know.
A lot of the Osage orange that was harvested in the 90s, in the year 2000, and in the 1980s, when traditional bow making people got really interested, kind of a recovery of traditional bow making. Everybody went out to harvest Osage orange. What they didn't realize is this Osage orange had been coppiced because it had been planted 70 years earlier and before that. And then it had been cut down. It was planted as fence posts, as living hedges. And then it was cut down. And then when it grew the second growth, this was absolutely beautiful bowwood. And so a lot of the bowwood that came on the market in the late 1980s, the 1990s, was exceptional wood because it was second growth wood.
Right.
And folks didn't know about that. It was one day I was at a market and a couple of old timers were talking about second growth. And I slipped over and started asking them. Somebody was making fun of them. And I said, hang on, these guys know what they're talking about. Let's pay attention to what they're saying. And they talked about hickory and how back on the farm, they would use second growth hickory for their axe handles. And it was like, the light bulb went on. Second growth wood. The grain is straighter, it's stronger, it's extraordinarily resilient wood, and it makes exceptional bowwood. So
it's as if it's been more refined with the second growth.
The second growth, when it's cut down, what happens is all trees have a lifespan. And by cutting the tree down, you actually keep it in a growth phase of life. And the second growth, we've got trees on our property that if we were outside, I'd show you. The first growth, it grows however it grows. Second growth is extraordinarily straight, extraordinarily fine, rigorous. It's often the first trees to get leaves in the spring, the last to lose leaves in the fall. And there's a quality of the wood that's like this is if you can capture the essence of youthful vigor in wood, you capture that. And Jaap's got a couple of pieces of Osage here.
This is a piece of Osage. It's probably from the last tree I cut. I don't cut wood anymore. But I don't know if you can see the form of the wood.
Yeah.
That's natural. I don't believe in steaming or anything in the wood. When I look at wood, you know, I look at it, what's in it. That's what I cut.
Right. So that is I mean, that's a stave of wood, right? You just
that's a stave of wood, yeah, solid piece
like that, and from there you would just work on that stave. But you said you don't steam it or anything.
No, I don't make curvatures in here. Like this has curvatures in it, a little setback.
You can see the growth lines.
Yes.
And
yes.
They don't quite go all the way through, but almost.
Yeah, and that's the natural form.
Right. Right.
And talking with a Cherokee man, and now we jump far forward. This is maybe year 2000.
Yeah.
We did the international horseback archery festivals in those days.
Yeah.
But we had a little how do you call it, around the table talk with different bow makers from different traditions.
Yeah.
And this Cherokee bow maker also said they never force the wood this way or that way, steaming or bending.
Yeah, yeah.
They look at the tree, and also they look at the purpose of the bow, what it's going to be used for. Will it be a hunting bow, war bow, or a ceremonial bow? They will cut it. Also, ceremonial-wise, they will cut it from a different side of the bow. So that was quite interesting to listen.
Is it anything?
Hastings Shade.
Go on.
The bow maker was Hastings Shade.
He's no more.
And he's no more.
Ah, okay. So is that something to do with, they don't want to mess with the nature of the wood itself and create something which is unnatural in it? Because as you well know, creating a curve in the bow can improve poundage or performance and things like that. Is it they just wanted to keep it as natural as possible?
You want to keep it as natural as possible, but also the spirit of that wood.
Right.
And it's also to maximize its purpose, because I talked to another Cherokee man, Pete Van, that we've known for years. And Pete and one of his friends were telling me how their grandpas used to graft wood. So the living trees, so out in the forest, there would be an Osage tree. And Pete, after his grandpa died, he'd be out walking and they'd go up, oh, look, that's a bow that grandpa was growing, because he grafted a branch on the tree. Wow. And Pete also talked about how when they were cutting the wood, the shoots, the rosier wood for making arrows, they would prune the wood, to prune the shoots in order to get it to grow exactly how they wanted it to grow. They didn't want to just go willy-nilly and harvest, but they were very careful about how they harvested, but they also cultivated the wood. So it's not that they were trying to keep it natural, because they were grafting in order to establish ears on the wood or certain bends on the Osage, but they were wanting to maximize a kind of holistic interaction with the wood, the bow maker, and the purpose. They were not averse to technology at all.
Okay.
I used to, in Canada, I used to go through fields where certain trees grow, and I would harvest, I call them elbows, the elbows small elbows in trees, for the sias, for the horn bows. So I get those. If I saw, like today, I still have trees here. When I'm very young, I kind of bind them so they grow in a curvature.
Right.
So I harvest that and I have a nice reflex piece of wood already. Then I can craft the elbow in there, and I got a complete reflex core with the size already in the bow. Then I put the horn on. Yeah. And to me, those are, you'll have a superior piece of wood.
So it's like a natural part of the bow already in nature. You've just harvested it out of there. Another interesting thing that always interests me is about the fact that archery is part of many native and aboriginal societies. So I've spoken to people from different, some, I was speaking to Bede the other day in Australia and talking about Aboriginals there and whether they had archery featured in their culture. But in the Cherokee people, archery was part of their lifestyle, right?
Yes. And still to today, they still have a living tradition.
Mm.
That's called the cornstalk shoot. They kept that, and that's a very popular game among the Cherokees.
Mm-hmm.
And when we did the Fort Dodge, we had the Cherokees over, and they brought the cornstalk shoot with them.
I have a picture of
And that's a crib of cornstalks, about 80 yards apart.
Uh-huh.
You get 2 arrows. You go back and forth, like the Bhutanese game of archery.
Okay, right. Interesting.
Here's the camera.
Uh-huh.
Okay, you can see the crib.
So yeah, what this is the pile of
corn stalks.
corn stalk. Okay.
And there's 2 of them that are set a distance apart. Usually they have a man walk 80 paces. So it can be 80 feet, it can be 80 yards, shorter, longer, depending on the paces. And there's 2 cribs. And
the cribs are the targets. They're trying to shoot the cribs.
The targets, yeah. The cribs are the targets.
Got you.
The arrow, traditional arrow, has a very long spike on the end. And the game is not that you hit, but it's how many you penetrate.
Right.
So they have like real needle points on the
Right. So it can go through the cornstalk. Yeah.
Now this picture happens to be from Fort Dodge, where there's a number of archery traditions that are brought together.
Yeah, I can see from the bows.
Their game.
Yeah.
And you can see there's a Chinese man who is no more, unfortunately. And then there's a man, Tom Delahanty, who is a practitioner of Kyudo. So we've got several different forms of archery that are coming together to participate in the archery game.
It's a lovely picture to see how they can all come together. Yeah. And the Cherokees would have used archery for, is it like hunting, gathering, or also for war and fighting? All of it. Yeah. Right. Interesting.
But what I understood is, for whatever purpose the bow was, that bow was made for that purpose.
Right.
And then we use another bow for the games or for the target.
Right.
Now another interesting story is native story is from the Oglala tribe, the Sioux tribe in South Dakota, and we had an interview with Diane Crowdog, and she was talking about the bow. The bow itself was not a war weapon. It was not considered being a weapon of war, even though it was used, obviously. But the weapon of war would be the club, the lance, and maybe some other stuff. I don't remember everything. But the bow was mainly it very almost like the Japanese was sacred is a very strong word, so I'm very carefully using that word sacred.
Yeah.
But it was held in awe, and it was a man's tool, and it was a tool to teach the man. And she was saying it like balance, the balance of left and right in the man's life.
Interesting.
What Diane talked about was, she said the bow was an instrument of life. And she described it as just as the curve of the moon or the curve of a woman's stomach during pregnancy. It's for life. And she meant that in a very real way, that the men in a traditional society, the men as hunters, would go out and bring food back, bring nourishment back. Yeah. And she was emphatic. She was absolutely emphatic that it was a tool for sustaining life.
Wow.
When we talked with her, we had stumbled upon her, not stumbled upon her, but we were looking to talk with somebody. We drove past her house and she was waiting for someone to pick her up. They didn't come. We came instead. So she said, go get your tape recorder. Go get your tape recorder. I want to be recorded.
You were sent there for a reason.
Yes. And later, this was out on Rosebud with the Congo, the Lakota star. And we went to talk to another Lakota elder, Albert Whitehat. And I was interested if there was a gender difference, if Diane Crowdog had emphasized the bow being an instrument of life coming from the female orientation. So I asked Albert Whitehat, tell me about the bow. And he said, it's an instrument of life. He echoed her. It was a sustained narrative about the importance of it being life-giving properties.
Yes, yes.
And there was earlier days was also an act of honoring your adversary, and you honor them by being face-to-face, by being close up. You show bravery. Maybe you're going to count coup because you've had enough courage to come and touch your adversary. Whereas the bow, that has a whole different purpose. And one of the comments that Diane had talked about was, be careful who you shoot, because it might be yourself.
Wow, wow, beautiful.
and one of the points that she emphasized was the bow is a gift. She never said in their tradition somebody would claim to have invented the bow, but the bow was a gift from the creator, and that it's up to humans to learn how to use that gift.
Yeah, that's an interesting...
that it's our responsibility.
Yeah.
When you look at all traditions,
yes,
no human inventor of the bow and arrow. Whether you look in the Quran and in Christianity or in Asiatic archery, no human inventor.
You think about the Hindu tradition. It comes the bow out of a sacrifice.
Right.
It's Rama's bow or it's Shiva's bow.
Yeah. This is very interesting. Absolutely. Yeah. This is something I've tried to delve into with different archers and things like that, and ask them more about kind of the esoteric or spiritual side. From my own perspective and my own background and culture, which is obviously the Islamic culture, we believe that the bow was given by God to the angel Gabriel, who delivered it down to Adam, who was the first human, and that's how it came. So it's very interesting, Jaap, that you say that it's a gift, and this lady Diane, she said it's a gift. So a gift is something that is given from someone. So where did this gift come from? And you're saying that no one has claimed to say that they've invented the bow, which is striking.
There are stories of the first humans being killed by an arrow.
But I have asked every traditional person I have ever met, and this is a lady from Sudan, this is somebody from Iran, this is Mongolia, this is the Lakota people, the Cherokee people.
Wow.
We've done a lot of travels, and I've met a lot of traditional peoples. Each and every one I've asked, can you tell me, where does the bow come from? Amazing. There are always stories that they received the bow.
Wow.
No tradition, to the best of my knowledge, has ever claimed humans have invented it. So where does it come from? Probably our ancestors, those humans who have come before us.
Right. No,
I'm always on the quest.
Yeah, go on.
I'm always on the quest, and I say it always in a joking manner because people think I'm already a little bit wacky. But I'm looking for a cave painting where simultaneously you see prehistoric animals being hunted, let's say a mammoth, with spears. Atlatls, spear throwers, and with a bow and arrow at the same time. And then me and my friend are sitting on a cliff watching that hunt happening. And I'm telling to my friend, what would happen if we tie two atlatls to a bow? Can we combine the power of the atlatl, which can shoot a very heavy projectile, and the bow is lighter? What if we combine those two abilities? What happens when you combine them? You have an Asiatic static ear bow, and I'm sticking to it.
Actually, we have found some petroglyphs that have both the atlatl and the bow.
Interesting.
That was out in Utah. We have found those petroglyphs.
Because I don't believe in linear evolution. Like I say, you get a couple of guys together, you get a vortex. The talk is, what happened? And you just tell your friend, let's just try it out.
Experiment.
That's how I do things, try it out spontaneously.
You try it and see if it works or not. But this was definitely a discussion I've had with a number of people in terms of, if we look at native people in all lands throughout the world, from South America, the Sahara Desert, the sub-Saharan desert, and then jungles in Borneo, Australia, the Red Indians, all over. And how is it that all of these native Aboriginal cultures feature archery? Was it that one point in history, they all came together and had a meeting and said, someone came up with the idea of archery? Not likely. Not likely. We can't say for sure, but it has to have come from somewhere. So, as from the Islamic belief, we say this is a very, archery is a very fitra discipline. The word fitra means very natural disposition. And so archery was revealed, we believe, to many Aboriginal people because they are the original, they are the pure, civilization of that particular part of the world, and it's not just a coincidence that all of these, Aboriginal native people have archery as part of their lifestyle. It's just a very interesting observation.
We also have to remember that stone tools predate humans. So Homo sapiens come after the appearance of stone tools. A lot of our tool making, we refined, we didn't necessarily invent. So we received that tradition. We received that tradition from Neanderthals, Homo ergaster. So the human, many of our ancestral relatives, ancestral lines of the humanoid beings who are with us only in our genetic makeup and only in the memories that we have. So we learn tool making from others,
right?
Stone tool making.
Yeah. Well, I mean, at each stage of civilization, this is how, this is what we call technology, right? I mean, at each stage, we learn a new technique or we try something out, and sometimes it happens by accident, or as they say, necessity is the mother of invention, and it just comes about, and that moves humanity forward into learning new techniques and applying new things to the tools that we have, right?
Yeah, partially for sure. For sure. And another good lesson is just observe nature. Just observe, just like spiders or beavers. Me coming from Holland, we're famous for building dikes in Holland. Well, we learned it. Maybe we learned it from the beavers. But you know what I mean? Nature.
Absolutely.
Nature already figured everything out.
Yeah.
And we just got to slow down and look at it.
Yeah.
And suddenly, like for instance, barrel tapered arrows. Well, look at the porcupine. Beautiful. In the States, we have they cut those long needles.
Yeah.
Beautiful barrel tapered. I said, wow, look at that.
That's right. So just keeping to the structure here. If we move on to it says, a bit in your bio about making bows for Hollywood and films like that. Tell us a little bit about that and how that came about.
Oh, Hollywood.
Bit of a jump, I know.
I got some. In America, there's a group. It's called the SCA, Society for Creative Anachronism. Anyway, this one fellow told me, "Hey, you gotta come there." I had that was '87. I had a shop on the market, outdoor shop, and I was making bows and arrows, selling bows and arrows. And he say, you should really apply. Set up shop that once a year they come together, 10,000 people, and you can sell your wares there. So, well, why not? Those days, money was hard to come by.
Sure.
So I went there, and my God, lots of people needed bows and arrows. And there are a lot of people walking around incognito. And in those days, there was a lot of craft people in that particular group, leather workers, metal workers, you name it.
Yeah.
And I was also doing my own craft, and this prop people from the movie was walking around, and I had special effects, and I had a double curved bow. I was already doing the double curved bow.
Right.
I said, that's exactly And somebody said, that's exactly what I'm looking for. And I look at, what are you looking for those type of bows? Because none of those bows were around.
Right.
And I said, well, I have them, I make them, what do you want? So, well, he introduced himself, from a prop shop in LA, and they needed so many bows for a movie. I think that was Dracula, Coppola.
Uh-huh.
And just in the beginning, there was a little scene with bows and arrows, and anyway, so I first thought it can't be real, but but it was real.
Yeah.
Anyhow, so that was my first interaction with Hollywood, and then over time there was some other little jobs, always for the same prop people, and then another prop shop from California and kind of like the martial art movies.
Mm-hmm.
And then the big one I got was from The Last Samurai,
Right.
with Tom Cruise. They called me up and said, hey, Tom Cruise. I said, who's Tom Cruise? I didn't even know Tom Cruise. And I didn't know what's movies. So anyhow, I did that. That was a big job.
How many bows did you have to make for that?
Tom Cruise, it was 113 bows. 113. Yeah, and they only gave me like yesterday, But hey, me and fresh from the boat, that's what I call myself, fresh from the boat. I can work day and night. So
yeah.
so I work day and night.
I can imagine. No sleep.
Then I showed my. I had one particular moment. I had 60 Yumis, the Japanese bows.
Right.
This one is not finished. It's kind of long. I don't know if it comes in the camera, but
yeah.
I had 60 standing against the wall. All the leather grip, everything was finished, And I showed my Sensei Shibata a picture of all the bows. And he said, "How long?" He meant, "How long did it take you?" I said, 2 months. Said, now you're a Yumi maker.
Wow.
That was the biggest compliment you can get.
Excellent. Yeah, that's your stamp of approval, right?
That's stamp of approval. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what all I do nowadays. Make the Japanese bows.
Yeah.
And make the bamboo composites. Make the shorter bamboo bows. And this design. This design has developed years and years ago. Everybody makes this design now, but
yeah. So at what point did you start to specialize in just Yumi bows then?
After '94, I started to come. I didn't want to handle fiberglass anymore. So hard on your health, and it's so expensive. And so. And everybody's working on the same pie. So I'm going to do something different. Work with different material. And I'm the only one I can develop my art and get good at it before other people come in. Nowadays, there's plenty of people using bamboo and stuff like that.
Sure.
But that gave me the time to learn.
Yeah.
So basically by '94 already, basically I faced all the fiberglass bows out.
Right.
And it was about that time that we actually met Sensei Shibata, Kenjiro Shibata, the 20th. The man that we met in Kyoto was Kenjiro Shibata 21, or he's now Kenjiro Shibata 21. But it was meeting the sensei in Vermont. It was around 95, 96. I can't remember the exact year.
How old was Kenjiro Shibata the 20th at that time? How old was he?
He was probably in his 80s at that time.
Right.
And he didn't speak English, but he spoke the language of archery. And we met him over tea. Don Szymanski was also helping kind of bridge the language gap.
Right.
And Jaap had taken a collection of his bows, everything from long bows to horn bows, horn composite, to self bows. And what was fascinating about that conversation was each bow that Sensei picked up, he examined with all of his senses, smelled the finish, he listened to the sound, he looked for the balance, he felt the balance. It was virtually everything except taste.
Wow, amazing.
Every other sense. And as we were talking, his hands would be moving up and down a bow, measuring it, feeling it,
Right.
weighing it, sounding it. It was again a moment of learning, measurement. It's not putting together material, but there's an entire aesthetic about it, and the aesthetic really demands the participation of all of your senses. Each bow that Jaap brought, since I picked up, examined again with tactile, all of that examination, and then he would run a commentary about it. He would comment, this is the kind of bow that would be used in Mongolia. This is the kind of bow. When he got to the long bow, he held it up and said, American GI. And we said, we don't understand American GI.
Right.
Well, the story is, after World War II, during the American occupation, when martial arts were banned, the bow makers were starving. And they figured out where a market was by creating long bows that were marketed for American GIs. They were bamboo composite bows, but they were made in the model of bows of the sort that the occupying Americans, the Americans living in Japan during that period of occupation, were shooting. And at the time, we didn't think to ask Sensei Shibata, how were they made?
Yeah.
But a couple of years later, we came across a catalog from a company, Malibu Archery, in the 1950s that were importing bows from Japan. They were made with 19 pieces of bamboo. The internal core, the facing, the backing, indeed, the absolute traditional way of Yumi making, except the profile is the profile of the American GI or the American longbow.
Yeah.
See, that could be coarse in the bow. See, in the Japanese bow would be just a single core, a single. All bows would have a single lamination. But however, if you turn it this way, you see there is this one has 4 strips of bamboo in there and 2 hardwood strips. And you can have variations on a team, you know, and this has strips of bamboo. And the GI bows would have strips of bamboo sandwiched between a natural bamboo.
Right.
The Japanese bow would be sandwiched. You could have a piece of bamboo in the back, and then you'll have a piece of bamboo in the belly.
Right. So presumably the bows that you're making now, you are sourcing your own bamboo that you have planted and harvesting.
Yes.
Right.
Again, like like today, a lot of people go buy wood at the hardware store, you know, and this is a nice piece of board. No, it's wood, but that's all it is, you know.
Yeah.
And same with bamboo. In order to get quality bamboo, I think the only place you can buy quality bamboo is from Japan. Bow making. I'm strictly talking bow making.
Yeah, sure.
However, Japan, you know, which is very expensive.
Yeah.
And a lot of Japanese bow makers don't want to sell the bamboo because they collect for themselves and for the future generations. Because bamboo gets older and gets only better.
Right.
And so for the next generation, they have good materials. So they're very hesitant in selling bamboo.
Yeah.
And I said, well, let's give a moment. Why don't I buy a piece of land and grow my own?
Yeah.
And make sure I get top of the line what I want out of the bamboo.
Yeah. Is it true? Is it true that bamboo grows very quickly?
Bamboo grows very quickly, but then, I mean, within 3 months, the pole is full length. But that pole still got to grow for another 4 years to harden. Then you harvest it; it's got to dry for another 3 years.
Wow.
Then, so you're already talking seven years before you touch it.
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
It's not just going in the forest and
chopping it down.
And another trick with bamboo is you go in there and you see beautiful poles. Oh man, straight, clean looking. Those are the ones you don't want to cut because they're fresh. See, the springtime to come up, and in 3 months they're way high. You got a beautiful, beautiful skin, looks so shiny.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's young. It still needs to harden, you know, it
Right.
needs to grow up and harden up. So, but if the bamboo is too old, it's like an old man, you know, like me. You get brittle and crippled, and you don't move any. You need like an 18-year-old, you know, muscle
in its prime.
So that's the bamboo you look for.
So when you're harvesting this bamboo, are you keeping it in batches and labeling it? Because 1, 2, 3 years go by, you have to remember what's what.
Yeah, well, in fact, the now, you know, when the shooting season is over, the poles are full length, I kind of go use a little spray paint and mark the date on the poles what grow there. So, you know, 4 years from now, I know, okay, that's that date, that's that date. And then when it's harvested bundles, you know, it's like a rotating wheel.
Right.
It's not only for myself. I provide a lot of bamboo for other bow makers and
sure.
things like that.
Sure.
So they want to make sure they get something better than the imported stuff.
Absolutely. So in the printout that you sent me, it says you've never done a museum copy of a reproduction.
Right.
And why is that?
Well, for myself, I feel like I'm forced to think in a box, and really difficult for me to be in a box.
Right.
My mind always, when I make a bow, even that is the same bow as the one I made before, but it's not the same.
Yeah.
I always look improvement. Like for instance, and even in Japan, you know, the bow makers they make thousands of yumis, you know.
Yeah.
If they're handmaker, but the bow make maybe hundreds of yumis a day. None of them is the same. They all look the same.
Yes.
But they're not the same.
Right.
And that's the same with even with laminated bows and with the horn bows. Yeah, you know, I know there are beautiful bows in the museums in Germany and in Turkey and other places.
Yes.
Beautiful paint jobs. Now I'm not a good painter, so I don't, you know, I couldn't develop that.
Yeah.
But I look at it and say, I wanted to make my interpretation and my way of doing things. Like for instance, if I make a horn bow, I probably put in a core that has the quality of the Japanese Yumi cores, you know, the hardwood side strips and the bamboo, because that's a really stable, fast core. So I would like to apply that into my horn bow.
Right. Now, I mean, if we look at, for example, the Turkish bow tradition, you know, one of the well-known people is Adam Karpowitz, Murat Özveri, these guys, you know, when they were able to look at original pieces in either Topkapi Museum or other museums, for them that was like a gold mine of looking at how bows were made, and they could see the cross-section, things like that. Have you ever come across like original pieces of I mean, you know, the fact that you have a link with a 21st generation teacher is that in itself is sufficient, because that is living history. So you don't necessarily need to go back into history. But have you come across you know, older original Yumi bows, and have you been able to kind of look at how they were made and things like that?
Yes,
we have several examples of old bows, traditional bows. There's a cross section. You probably can't see it. I'm going to move the camera.
Okay.
And I think you're seeing it. It's right on. It's right.
Let me see.
Oops, I'm moving it.
That
right
one.
There.
The different style bows, cross sections.
So this is a horn composite bow.
Yeah.
And it is probably Indo-Persian bow. Yeah, you can say more about the bow. Bring it down. Oh, yeah.
This is Indo-Persian.
Yeah.
And I cut them lengthwise. I don't cut them across. Lengthwise, you can see the taper of the core, the thickness of the sinew. Here's a Korean bow, and this is a Chinese Manchu bow. And like I said, by cutting lengthwise through the limb, you can actually observe fluidness of the thinness and the thickness of the core and of the sinew and the horn. So that's how I did it.
And then running across
lengthwise for you is better than across.
Cross section.
Yes.
Both.
But the length, to have it lengthwise, tells me a whole lot more.
Right. Interesting.
We have quite a few examples of original bows. Yeah. And we've gone to quite a few museums. And at one point, Lucas knew one of the sieges, maybe siege of Vienna. And Jaap and Lucas and the bow and I spent like almost a whole night talking, the bow in front of us. And it was like a four-way conversation where Jaap, Lucas, two bow makers are talking. They'd pick up the bow, they'd start talking about it. Lucas would make the observation that, you know, hey, I understand what this bow maker did. He had the same problem that I had. They have. And then they put down and then they talk some more, and then they pick the bow up again and talk some more about it. The whole key is not to copy a bow, because you're doing a disservice to a tradition, but you're inspired by what earlier generations have done.
Interesting.
I mean, like in the early years of my hornbow making, I met a fellow. He had he was a collector of anything, but of everything. Fine stuff. But anyway, he gave me a Manchu bow, beautiful Manchu. He said, take it home, hang it up, let it speak to you, see if you can reproduce it. So that's how I look at that bow. And
how about original Yumi bows?
I got some Indo-Persian bows from him too.
How about original Yumi Japanese bows from, I don't know, 100 years ago or something?
Oh, I have an old one here at home, but at Shibata Sensei's house, there are some really, really old bows. Then I was also at the, it's an old, really nice old one.
Oh, beautiful. This is
crab bow.
Crab bow, yeah. Wow, amazing. And these are originals.
Those are originals. And especially the one you can see asymmetric, you know.
Yeah.
I really believe in asymmetric bows. All my bows, even when I make fiberglass bows, you know, way back, they were always asymmetric. There is something to asymmetric. Very difficult to make.
Yes.
Something to that.
This was a question actually I had, because many bow makers today, they're reproducing symmetrical bows, and you know, asymmetrical are, like you say, people don't want to produce asymmetrical because it's difficult. It's harder.
It's difficult.
You know, it's much more difficult. What is it about the asymmetrical bow that you think is superior or better, or why do you prefer asymmetrical?
Asymmetric bow means, and this was 1983 in Japan when I picked up the Japanese bow. And he said the way the Japanese bows, they say it shoots flat.
Right.
Flat and far. In fact, when you train Kyudo, you're not trained to shoot where the arrow goes up and down. No. That arrow got to go flat like a bullet.
Right.
That's how you're trained to shoot. And when you go to Sensei Shibata, that temple in Kyoto, you know, 120-meter long distance underneath the veranda.
Wow. Yeah.
You know, that means you got to shoot very, very flat. And you don't have to have powerful bows, you know. I'm one of the very few Western people in America. In fact, there's only one other one. We got trained a little bit in that style of shooting. It's very different than Kyudo, of course. But again, and my sensei told me, don't go too heavy in the bow, because you shoot thousands of arrows, you know.
Right.
It's the consistency of technique you got to learn.
Right. But I mean, but for that distance, they're still using a Yumi bow, presumably. Yes. And what poundage are you pulling? 30, 40, 50 pounds?
He advised me don't use more than 25 kilos, so that's about 55, 60 pounds.
Really? And the long distance they shoot is how far did you say?
120 meters.
Wow.
Underneath the veranda, underneath the roof. The roof is only 4 meters.
And they can reach 120 meters and shooting straight.
Yes.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah, it's just, well, there will be a tiny little angle in there, of course, you know.
Yeah.
But there's also a trick, and I never, my Sensei, you know, we call him Sensei. Sensei passed away, you know, he's Sensei. Sensei. He passed away, already quite a few years ago.
He's number 20.
That is the 20th, yeah.
That's 20.
He was telling me there's a way to shoot where the arrow doesn't go up, but it's kind of on an outside curve.
Really?
And man, you know, it's very hard to talk with those traditions, you know, when you start asking, the door closes, you know.
Oh. it's like they're tempting you. It's like they're tempting you. They want to give you the information, but once you start asking, they don't tell you. Wow.
Yeah. And when you're under 120 meters, you're under, you know, 4 meters. I think it's 4 meters, 4 or 5 meters. Anyway, that's quite low, 4 or 5 meters.
Oh, definitely, very low. Yeah, for sure.
Meters.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
Be, you know, it's just a tunnel.
Yeah, it's very straight.
So that's technique, and you know, and why he taught me. I asked him, asked Sensei for that technique if he wanted to teach me that, and he asked me why. And I said, well, I want to do flight shooting, long distance shooting, and I believe I can use the same technique for that. And he agreed, and that's the only reason why he wanted to teach me.
Wow.
So you shot 200 meters.
Interesting.
On flight.
Yeah, with a Yumi. I think Kay shot over 200 meters with a very lightweight Japanese bow, 20 pounds or something.
Yeah.
It's even more unbelievable because Yumi bow, long limb, you need a very long arrow. Longer arrow means more weight, etc., etc. So to reach that distance with a very light bow is, I mean, it can only come down to skill, I guess.
So my record is 184 meters, and about 200. And yours is 204 meters.
204 meters.
Wow.
And that's lightweight bows. Now think about it. My sensei always said, "Oh no, we used to shoot." And they're an old family. I've seen an old Japanese painting after that was the first Mongol invasion, where all the clans, the Kamakura period, I think it was, the clans would come together, and I saw the moan of the Shibata family there. So they were there already.
Yeah.
And he was telling me, you know, the first, when the enemy comes, you know, the first arrows, 600-800 meters they shoot, you know, lightweight arrows, and the closer they come, the heavier the arrows will be.
Right.
And a lot of people don't believe our Japanese bow can't shoot that far, but all they know about the Japanese bow is the Kyudo bow. Kyudo is a very different aspect, and that's only the thing that survived. Let's say 90% of Japanese archery today is Kyudo. There are still some schools who train the other ways, you know, warfare type shooting.
Okay.
Or
yeah, that's right. So yes, many people do see they think Japanese archery Kyudo only, but you're saying there were other aspects, flight archery, military archery, and things like that.
That flight is still going on, and I tell you, once you see in the Yumi what is, let's say 50 pounds and more, if you see a 100-pound Yumi being shot, you have no doubt that it will outperform or perform at par with any hornbow. You just have no doubt. And even Lucas, when Lucas years ago, when he cut himself a 25 kilo Yumi, when he said, "Oh my God," he couldn't believe it. Say, "Now you know,
really?
You know, now
really?
You know."
Yeah. That's amazing. I just want to briefly go back to the two the crab bows that you had there.
Yes.
How does one string them practically? Because the limbs are so bent back. I'm not going to ask you to demonstrate, but I mean, what is the method of stringing that? You can't just put it between your legs or anything like that. I've seen Justin Ma. He was showing me with some heavy bows. He uses
the string,
a rope around his body, and he pushes it with his leg. Is that a similar method with the crab bow, or is there another way?
The crab bow, you first need to open it up like the Korean bow, very much like the Korean bow, where they put like a bar between the ears.
Okay.
Now, and then you put a tapalik around the limbs.
Yes. Okay.
However, if the bow is used, used on a not on a daily basis, but on a very regular basis, the bow is used, it's flexible.
Right.
So I will bend it around my two knees, and my wife can tell me about it. I was asking, can you put the string on the other?
So yeah, with you always need someone else to help. You
Yes.
can't do it by yourself, right?
Unless you use the tiplets.
Unless you use tapaliks. If you tie
Yes.
tapaliks on the limbs, then you can use it by yourself. Now, some of the Turkish bow, and Lucas Novotny, he's very good at that technique. Then, he would just grab any Turkish bow and just step through method.
Yeah.
But you gotta know your equipment. I would never advise a client use that method, because we're doing it daily.
Yes.
Right? Even when you read the Turkish annals or from Korea, from it, when there's a competition, the bow makers would string the bows for the competitor.
Ah, interesting.
They're unfamiliar with
Right.
what's going on in a bow. The same with the Yumi. When the Yumi is new or you don't use it for a long time, have it done by somebody who knows, who can feel the bow, and you can feel what's going on in that bow. And you can, right away you can adjust your power this way or that way, more pressure here or less pressure there.
Yeah. So with the Yumi, so it's so tall, is it similar to like a longbow, how you would string a longbow, or do you need anything extra to string that? Or
two methods. One is there's some bracket. Let's say there's a bracket on the wall.
Aha.
And one can push down in it. I don't like that method.
Okay.
Especially for people who are not familiar with their bow. Another method, and it might be very difficult to see.
Yeah.
But let me try to move. Anyway, I would kneel down on the floor.
Yes.
The ground.
Uh-huh.
And have the bottom limb on my knee.
Yeah.
And my hand would be exactly where the grip is of the bow. And I press down.
Aha.
Press down.
Okay.
Press down, put the string on.
Right.
That's very, very safe.
That looks like a much safer method.
You control the wiggling, everything. What's happening in the bow.
Is this the way that Shibata Sensei would have done it as well?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, both. But the wall. But you don't always have a wall with you.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. No, that's strikingly simple, but obviously you have to know how to do it properly. Yeah, straightforward. I see on the wall behind you, you have two Korean bows there as well. Is that right?
Yeah, we got Korean.
By the cabinet.
Yeah, there's some old Korean bows on the wall, and I also have some. This is bamboo 4 Korean bows I obtained. So again, they use.
Just lift it up slightly up. Just lift it up slightly so I can see. Yeah, there we go. Okay. Is that one bow, or what did you say? 4 bows?
No, there's several. I think there's 1, 2, 3 bows. 3 bows. Already cut the length and rolled up. And I don't know if you can see the cross hatches.
If you lift it slightly up for me.
Can you see the inside?
On the inside. Okay. Very slightly, yes.
Yeah. So what it is, this bamboo was harvested, and while it's still quite fresh, they would cut it to length, and heat it and shape it, and then put the cross hatches in, and then they roll it up in this roll, and then they put it away to dry it like this.
So okay, this bamboo is going to be used for what type of bow?
Korean bow.
Right. Okay. And they keep it rolled up because that's where the poundage comes from, the strength.
Yeah. So it's like a pre-reflex. It's dried in a reflex form already, the bamboo.
Yeah.
So
just angle your camera down slightly.
Reflex, so it wants to go back.
Just angle the camera down slightly if we can see it. Yeah, a little bit more if we can. There we go. Okay. Yes, got it. Right. I see. Right. So that's 3 bows in there. Wow, amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. This is interesting.
At what stage is those three bows together? At what stage are they in the bow making process?
This could be used right away. I got this rolled up maybe
Wow.
15 years. I got it as a display for a Korean archery. So I got the bamboo, I got the horn, I got some, like this is a broken bow, Korean broken bow. You can see the splice in here.
Yeah.
I got several of that stuff. And sometimes I would put a display up for a talk.
Right.
And talk maybe just a Korean bow.
Yeah, excellent. That's very interesting. Very interesting. Okay, let's go on to, because I'm just keeping a track on time here, and I think at this rate we're definitely going to have to do a part 2, because it's all very, very interesting. Okay, on a slightly technical question in terms of shooting a Yumi bow with the release. So is it fingers? Is it thumb? I've seen they have a glove where, because you know with the Kyudo, their fingers are kind of straight like this, and they're kind of not pinching the string but hooking. So just explain to me how that works.
So there's a glove. There's a. Can you? Oh, I can't.
Either lift the hand. Oh, yeah, lift your hand there. There we go. Okay, I can see that. Yeah.
So there's a glove that goes over the hand.
Right.
And this part is a bone.
In the glove.
It's made out of bone or horn. There's leather around it, and it's a tiny little groove on the inside.
Right.
And actually, it's very much like a Manchu type of release. So the 2 fingers go in.
Yeah.
This goes, and you turn.
Right. With a slight turn.
Slightly. Yeah.
Interesting.
And which you do with the turning too, because that holds the arrow against the bow.
Correct.
And
okay.
Once you get progress more and more, Sensei was always telling both thumbs, one from the bow hand and one from the arrow hand, both thumbs push towards the target.
Right.
Line up towards the target.
Right.
And
right.
The glove is so sensitive. So one tiny little move, that string is gone.
Wow, really?
Now that's a Kyudo glove, right?
Okay.
Today for yabusame is a flexible glove because you're on a horse, so it's so they have a pad here. But the technique of shooting, of course, it would be a leather pad. The technique of shooting is the same.
It's the same. So in terms of the release, is it just you're opening up the thumb slightly and the string is gone?
No. So in Kyudo, it's 70% push, and 30% pulling. You expand, and bang! It's an explosive release. Some it's just like this.
Yeah.
Or a shortcut, bang,
Wow. Okay.
That's the most powerful release you can have. And you can have a slappy release. The Sensei would call it slappy. It's like throwing seeds in the ground. You just throw.
Okay. But the cleaner and the more explosive the release, the better.
Yes. More power in it.
Right.
So because you really push the bow out, and I advise anyone with tumbling shooter, make sure you keep expanding, keep the chest expanding, and then give them on, paff. This opens, and because this one it's not a conscious pull anymore when you full draw, but don't stop at full draw. You just keep expanding, keep the pressure on, and that bow hand keeps pushing out, and then a certain moment, bang.
Yeah.
And, the muscles in your back and the shoulders, they squeeze together.
Because presumably you get to a point where, I guess very similar to modern archery, I mean, they don't suggest that your shoulder blades squeeze together, but traditionally you can. You get to a point where you can't pull any further. Is that your release?
No.
No. Okay.
No.
Should the release be subconscious, or is it?
You can pull too far. There's a certain point there, but it's the key is to keep that preloaded energy. It's like an energized release, and that's why I wanted to use for flight. Because with the temple shooting, it's a much more of a push. You know, it's like you're pulling a slingshot here, and that force to push. And this really, your chest automatically expands into the release, and so there's no wasted energy. And
would you
quite often when you watch the art, you know, when you watch the full draw in compound, you see it in any type of, you'll see it all over, and that's what you want to avoid at all costs.
So is it a you know, modern archery, they say, you know, it should be a subconscious movement, or the release should not be a movement by itself, but rather from the expansion of the shot, it should happen by itself. Is that something similar in Kyudo or not?
Well, Kyudo, I don't think about my release. I expand, and I don't think. I don't even aim.
It just happens. It just happens.
It happens, you know.
Right.
But I keep, and I don't think I aim now. If I do other archery, then I have to start aiming, and then I lose something.
Yeah.
So
interesting.
Therefore, when I used to do a lot of shooting, I brought in my Kyudo experience back to the regular archery, where I keep that expands, and I find that arrow just flies that much flatter and faster.
With yabusame, just briefly, I mean, yabusame again has been a long time tradition, just like Kyudo. How much more difficult is it to be on a horse with such a long bow? Because many people think, they look at the Turks, the Huns, etc. Their bows are so short, but the Japanese were the ones who broke that tradition, and they were able to shoot with such long bows.
Yep. I spent many time with Sensei from the Takeda 2000, 3000, 2001, 2, 3. Anyhow, and whenever I would go to Japan, I would spend, that school started in the year 900. I would come to his house, spend the whole day sitting on the floor and, drink archery. And so they used to say, bow. Sometimes the bow was just a little bit, the difference between. Now the inside of the Yumi might be, originally the inside of the Yumi is a little different. Same with the long distance shooting Yumi. The inside is different.
Okay.
And so the practice with the same bow, and it's difficult, but the bow, they shoot both sides of the horse, so they can do, and they go full blast. I mean, horse
full
they go like a hurricane, and boy, they're fast. But for them, they're so precise. The timing, in the side of the kind of stand, and the timing of the horse in themselves is so synchronized, and then the movement is one fluid moving. They release that the hand right away moves and pick up that arrow, and they're ready to load up again.
Beautiful. It's like a
fascinating to see.
Yeah, it's like a dance in a way. They've got it down to an art form, isn't it? Yeah, absolutely.
I talked to Naoko Sakamoto, who was the first woman to train with Takeda Ryu. And we've known Naoko for years. And so I asked her, well, tell me about what you're doing. And the way that she describes it is, there's a certain way as the horse is galloping, as it's moving, and you have the movement, and there's like a trough and a height.
Right.
And you sense that movement, and you know when, and you're timing yourself. You're timing yourself really carefully, and you know when to release. And I don't recall whether she said it's either at the height or at the trough is the moment of release. But the stirrups are not regular stirrups as you would see in Western archery. They're like like sleighs, out of wood, and that's what they're very stable. So there's a lot of stability on their feet and the grounding. And of course their timing, because as they're galloping towards where the target is, they've got to release at the moment that they're going to hit that clay target and shatter it.
I had once the honor of sitting next to the target, because there are judges next to the target.
Oh yeah.
And I had the honor.
Very brave man.
Me to be that way. Here, what do I know about horses? All I know about the horses, you look at them, they spook up. So I'm trying not to look. All I heard is thunder, 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 and bang! That arrow hitting the target. Oh God, it was fascinating.
Amazing, amazing. Guys, I'm
likewise just, looking at Mongolians shooting the owl. So asked me.
Yes, go on.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
They asked me, come to the target, because there need to be several persons,